Hey everyone. So, I've been on a journey of trying to refresh some old things that I used to know way back when. I'm a data scientist, so I wanted to just go over the basics of all the math related to data science for quite some time. And the thing is, I always fail. I always pull up like Coursera or whatever, and or Khan Academy, honestly, is a popular one, and I never seem to stick with it for the long time, especially when I'm completely in consumption mode and trying to just consume videos and information and things like that. And y'all getting my live itching of my ear. I apologize for anyone who's watching. That's a bit disgusting. But regardless, I think the closest I stuck with it was I was doing Khan Academy at some point last year, and I was just literally just blowing through questions. I'm like, I know this stuff more or less, and I'm just trying to refresh, And past that, even when I hit like um, a roadblock, I would easily abandon things because I wouldn't think of it as a closed loop. What do I mean by that? I mean, like, when I work and then there's something I actually don't remember that well, like stats or linear algebra, if there's a certain thing that I'm like, what was that again? And then I start looking into it and I get into this mindset where I am not, I feel very disconnected because I'm like, okay, I can learn this, but this isn't necessarily something that's really connected to my day to day if I'm not doing it in code. And so I was just really thinking about like all my learning lessons over the past years and how they work, how learning works, and I think it comes down to a few really simple, really basic things. One is learn by doing, just like try and dive into doing the thing rather than just consuming a video about it, right? And then even within like 5-10 seconds, like, oh, I have no idea about how to do this. Then you just quickly look up like a small snippet, you know, um, a small video maybe, or just like a little Google blog post thing or whatever, right? Dive right into the deep end. Just try to do the thing. Number two, try and construct your learning in a manner that is integrated with your goals. Uh, because if it's not integrated with your goals, even if you're doing the first thing, like when you hit a roadblock that is kind of more difficult than the normal roadblocks, you're gonna probably abandon it. And number three is take the time to think about things as well. Like I have many times just stopped and like sat back and started thinking about something that I was just learning. Like I'll read a sentence and I'll start thinking like, oh, so does this mean that or whatever. Um, and finally, trying to teach other people. That's the one I've actually just heard a lot about, and at times here and there in my life, I've ended up doing it accidentally, and I've remembered those things really well. And that's actually what this video is a part of. It's just as much for other people as much as it is for me. I really want to just go through the process of learning, and that is someone in the background that I'm going to ask you to ignore for anyone who's watching in the video at whenever of the 5 people that will watch this video. um, let's go through the process of learning itself. So we're just going to start with something super simple. I'm just going to open up ChatGPT. I already have a saved conversation, and this is actually something I've already done. I actually did it very recently, so it's very fresh in my memory, but I just kind of want to go over it again. I have a paid ChatGPT subscription, but honestly, you can do this without ChatGPT. You can do this without the paid ChatGPT. You can use it with, or any AI thing, or maybe if you want, you could just not use any AI tool at all and just create this by yourself. Essentially, I just went here, I just asked it to give me a bunch of coding exercises for learning linear algebra, which I actually preempted this with another conversation about another conversation with ChatGPT about, like, all the essential learning points for math in data science, right? So we're just going to start with this, and I'm just going to try to stick with focusing on showing the thought process behind learning, instead of just focusing on the outcome. So we're just going to start with this first one of writing a small Python script for dot products. So I'm just gonna open up VS Code really quickly. I don't. I'm not gonna. This isn't meant for. And as you can see, I'm already using this space a lot. So I'm just gonna call this ex1 dot prod for recording. I actually also have Copilot, but I have it disconnected right now so that we can just do this all live. And let's just go back to the exercise, right? So we're gonna write a function that takes two Python lists of equal length and returns their dot product, right? So I went with this process because it's aligned. I went with this process of like creating coding exercises out of all the math problems because that's where it's connected. It's like doing all of this in code, getting better at the code part of it, and also getting better at the math at the same time. And actually thinking about it in code has helped me really cement some of these things. I've gone further down in this list, but we'll get to those in hopefully future videos. So rather than reading this super well, I just kind of want to look, okay, I'm just doing dot product and norms. How do I do a dot product? So I'm just going to Google how to do a dot product, right? I'm just going to actually use Gemini in a way because if you phrase things as a question, Google automatically pulls up a little Gemini AI overview. Is a scalar product of is a scalar or inner product is a mathematical operation that takes two vectors and returns a single scalar value, right? So, okay, maybe I'm not understanding that well. There's a lot of things here. Given two vectors, a b equals a1, blah, blah, blah. What I generally tend to do is I just pull up the images and go for an image search as well. And try and see something that aligns with what I've already done as to how a dot product is calculated. These are actually using some geometric interpretations of dot products. This one over here with the norm of A and norm of B, I think, times cosine theta. I'm gonna try and see if I can find a more general. I'm just gonna type how to calculate a dot product. And then I'm like, oh, okay. So it's simple. The dot product is of two vectors. Any two vectors of equal length is just going to be the sum of their elements, the sum of the products of the individual elements, basically, is what I'm trying to see, right? Now this is a basic, whatchamacallit, very basic, very simple, very straightforward, task to do in data science and math, right? So when I was doing this, I was like, okay, how do I make this a little bit harder for myself? And that's what I'm going to try and explore. I actually went to my Pylance server. So let me just, because I have Pylance, which is essentially gives you not code completion, but like loads of like errors and annotations about ways to improve how you're writing your code. So I'll just go into my Pylance settings and I'll show you what I mean. So if I go to Pylance, go to settings. There you go, settings. Where is my settings? I'm doing this all live rather than pre-recording, which is maybe not the smartest idea. Oh, there you go. It's settings right there. I'm blind. So I scroll down and I was like, hey, right now I have type checking mode off, where variable type mismatches, function return type checks, etc., etc. All this is just switched off. So One thing I was pretty bad at with Python, actually, even though I knew it existed and understood the basics of it, was like type annotations and hinting and things like that. And I wanted to be a bit better about that. So that's another thing I think, just as a general learning thing, is if you're trying to refresh yourself and you start from something super simple that, is like, even if you don't know it, sometimes you'll learn something that's like, oh, that's dead simple, right? In the process of learning it, make it a little bit harder for yourself. So what I did was I actually just switched this to strict, which made my life hell. And I'll show it to you in the other completed video, in the other completed notebook, which I'll get to at the end of this video. But here, let's just go def.prod, and it takes vectors A and B as inputs. So A, what do I want to return? I want to return each of the elements multiplied with each other and then summed up in each vector. So we can return, let's say, the sum, and we can do maybe a list comprehension here. We could have done this in a for loop and put it together and then do something like that. But once again, just trying to make it a little harder for myself. Let's see if we can do this in one line. This isn't actually super hard or anything like that, so it would be, let's say, E times B E underscore IDX for E in, for E underscore IDX, comma E in enumerate A. Let's just say that. I think that should be fine, right? Now, just to showcase how I'm doing this live, over here I can go back into ChatGPT. Another easy way is like, because it's like, okay, I did my function, that's quick, but you want to test it and make sure you're understanding it, right? So we're just gonna open a new chat and be like, let's copy this coding exercise. I'm gonna paste that here. Give me tests so I can test my code. Don't give me any code for writing the dot product function. Okay, so it's just giving me a bunch of asserts, which is really nice. Oh, what is this? Assert ABS dot prod 1e6 comma 2e6 minus 3 is less than. Okay, so this is a really weird one over here. Euclidean norm test cases. It's also giving me some for Euclidean norms. So basically I'm gonna talk about this right now, about what asserts are, rather than going into a rabbit hole of Googling. But if you're following along at home, I would recommend you just pause and like actually start Googling each of these things if you're confused. And even if you're confused in terms of how to install Python or whatever, like just start going wild, learn. Another thing about learning is to learn not just about the thing you're trying to learn, but also learn a little circle around it, so that you can you can understand the context. And when you understand context, it's easier to cement what you're actually trying to learn. So basically each of these, so an assert statement is basically, it takes in a Boolean and it evaluates to true or false, and if it's false, it throws up an error and kills execution. It's great for writing unit tests and things like that, and I think there are more mature frameworks for writing unit tests in Python, but this is like the simplest way to write tests in Python, is to use assert. Furthermore, I believe when you launch an application through a CLI, you can pass a flag to it to not calculate all the asserts. So if you're in a production environment and you have all these asserts in there, make sure you can just leave it in there in the final production build. and just enable that flag when you actually run the app in like a Docker container or something like that, whatever. Um, so it's just assert dot prod. So this function calls this, and this is the answer, right? It just keeps doing that again and again and again, right? Now here we have a little weirdness, right? So instead of it's doing it in a slightly weird way, where it's taking the absolute value of this minus 3. So that means the output of this dot product of these two vectors of 1e6, 2e6, and 1e neg 6, 1e neg 6, which I believe is 1e6 is a million, right? Million, 2 million, and then 0.0000001 and 0.0000001 again. So that's the 1e neg 6. That's essentially like a power. Minus 3, the answer should be 3, I'm guessing. And less than 1e neg 6. Now, what is this about? So this is something that, once again, I recommend that you just go out there and check up yourself and look it up online yourself. And because I used to see this a lot, and it was like really weird. And if you don't know why this is being written this way, I would really strongly recommend you do go down that rabbit hole yourself. But for me, this is but essentially what this is saying, why it's being done like this, is when you have a floating point calculation that is supposed to be 0 in pure math. Sometimes floating point calculations aren't like perfectly rounded, and so you might get like 0.000000001 instead of purely 0 because of a floating point rounding error at some point, which is just general limitation of computers, and that's why it says less than 1e neg 6, meaning that if it's smaller than 0.00001, I'm going to stop saying that again and again, then that's basically 0, just accounting for that, you know. It even says here large small values. That's what you do that for. If you're using NumPy, that you'll see the keyword argument tol, TOL, equals tol, and then that keyword argument also kind of ties into the same idea, wherein if you set that keyword argument and give it some number, it will be like, okay, there's a tolerance range on any number between that is within this tolerance, right? Basically, it's right. So you can just use this to test our stuff really quickly. I'm just gonna hit the copy button. Let's see here, right? We're just gonna rename our function to ._prod because that's just easier than this. I already have an environment set up. If you don't know how to set up an environment in VS Code, once again, I highly recommend you look that up. So I've run this cell. It's in a Jupyter Notebook, and I'm running this one. Oh, it's perfect. I'm just gonna do a couple of these by hand. So 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 6 is 6, 12, 18. 18 plus 10, 28. 28 plus 4, 32. So yeah, 32 is correct. Just vibe checking AI answers. Not vibe checking, that's not the right word. But yeah, like if you are using AI stuff, which I am clearly in this video, please be skeptical and careful. Because it does do wrong things. I'll give you a quick example, even though it's jumping a few episodes ahead. And you know what? I'll show it to you some other time. Now going back to the Pylance server thing, as you can see, this thing is throwing up problems. I'm not going to do the norm in this video. Neither am I going to do the Euclidean norm or testing this with NP with NumPy's .prod function to confirm this. I'm just gonna trust this for now, even though I have done that separately, and I strongly recommend you do that just to get in the practice of using NumPy and testing these things out yourself. As you can see, Pylance is throwing a lot of issues my way. It's pissed off about what is here and what's being returned, right? So we're gonna fix that right now. We're gonna do some typing annotations. So when I first started this, once again, I'm not gonna go into the Google rabbit hole, even though I really wanted to, because I had a very short set time for today in terms of um, how much time I wanted to dedicate to this video. So I just really want to wrap this up and get this out there because I feel like there's no better time to start than today for anything in life. Um, so to try and fix this, I went through a large um, rabbit hole of Googling things and figuring things out of how typing works, what it is. I think one of the biggest takeaways is when you're doing typing and annotations in Python, remember things are only checked at runtime. So this is more for code readability and for people who might be consuming your code because they'll consume it in an IDE or something like that. And that's where these type hints and such become useful. So in terms of how to do it, I believe it is a colon. So I think, if I remember correctly, it's from typing import union. Okay, so there's lots of different, what you call it, classes you can use from the typing module that's part of core Python. Union is basically just saying that, it means either this type or that type. So a can be of union int, actually incorrect. So we're gonna say list union int comma float. I'm gonna do the same for B. I'm just gonna actually just copy paste this. Now, technically, this is actually, even this is not the most appropriate because you can, I'm just gonna finish this really quickly before I finish my statement. So even this using list is not necessarily the most appropriate because then, like, if I go over here, and let's say instead of a list, I do a tuple. Right? It's going to instantly throw me an error, right? And that's because it's very specifically and aggressively asking for a type list, right? Now, once again, since this is Python, if I run this function, it's still going to be fine. Typing, once again, because in Python, type checking and all those things are checked at runtime. We don't have to worry about this per se, but it's a good thing to keep in mind, when you do really properly want to construct these typing hints, right? You're going to want to use something like sequence, right? Because sequence, boom, takes it out. So sequence, if we can highlight this. Okay, never mind. Basically, a sequence is more of a generic identifier of a type of iterator. There's sequence and there's iterable or something like that. And a sequence is more like a traditional list or something like that. It's definite and it's indexable, things like that. Whereas iterator can be any type of iterator, not just one that is indexable and definite. For example, like a generator like a generator expression where each item is yielded in a lazy fashion, right? So this was just my video. It's a lot of rambling, a lot of random information, a lot of things that I myself just wanted to talk about and reinforce for myself. And I wanted to do it in a fashion that also hopefully not just shows you the thing of learning, which is it's honestly a very simple thing that we did here is just doing a basic dot product. But also just to think about how you could create such a program for yourself. Because, like, I mean, even with I have a paid ChatGPT subscription, but asking the question that I asked of creating a small list of coding exercises for yourself in another domain should be viable with even like a regular GPT 4.0 free subscription, free tier chat GPT questions. And there's others, and if you're really motivated, maybe if you really want like a powerful LLM for no good reason, you could, maybe locally install Llama, whatever. And honestly, you don't need to. You just need to, um, because it's easier for me to do it this way. But another way to do it, if you want to, you could just like create these coding exercises yourself. It's like, okay, this is the thing I gotta learn. I want to do this as coding exercise. And it can be difficult at times. For example, in stats and in many other fields, there's lots of things that are just abstract concepts that you just have to understand, in which case you can't rely on this like learn by doing thing necessarily. You just really have to spend time with it mentally and maybe try to explain it to someone else. uh, but you can do it for a lot of things. Then I would bet it's even outside of the tech field. Before I go, I'm just going to show you the original notebook that I made. So that's this one. I had copy and pasted the same thing. I actually went ahead and, oh, I never used a sequence type. I don't know why that is, or maybe it didn't save. I don't know what's going on here. Return type is unknown. Okay, so it's not the best. I thought the Pylon server would. Oh, I think I know what the issue is. It's because the kernel isn't loaded. Here, let me just fix that really quickly. Boom, there you go. Um, Created a type of numeric, which is union of int and float. There should actually honestly be a sequence as well, not just a list. Just your regular dot product, did it the same way. Also, I never went over enumerate. It's basically like going for x in any iterable, except it also gives you the index. So that was how I did both, all of it in one line. Once again, another thing, if you want to look into, you can. These are all really simple things, but just like putting it all together and making it a little bit harder for myself, because the stuff that is dot product is very simple and very straightforward, right? And I just read some tests and I did it. And you know what? If anyone wants this actual notebook, I can hand over. There's really not much here. Yeah, that's everything I have for you guys today. Have a great one. Bye bye.